Ongamaheshi. My name is Jennifer Leal, and I am the founder of the Field of Tribal Courts. I am a descendant of the Washoe tribe and Mona Lake Paiute communities in California. I come here today to present an online educational session with over 15 years of experience working in a tribal court as a court administrator for about 5 years in a court that handled jurisdiction in both a PL 280 and non-PL 280 state. I also handled several cases for both civil and criminal cases, as well as multiple jury trials. I also have experience with working with tribal court education at a national level for several years. And I have, as of this year, I have about 10 years of teaching experience working with tribal court education. I work with the Field of Tribal Courts, and I have partnered with the Indian Nations Gaming and Governance program at the William S. Boyd School of Law. We have partnered mainly in the area of tribal justice education. So the Indian Nations Gaming and Governance program focuses mainly on Indian tribal gaming and governance. Tribal justice systems are an essential part of tribal governance. So with our partnership, we are going to be putting on a series of online educational trainings to bring awareness about the importance of tribal courts in this country. For today, I am going to discuss the role of the tribal court administrator. Not many people really know what is involved with being a tribal court administrator working in some of the most unique and beautiful tribal court systems out there. So let's get started. Today in this country, there are 574 federally recognized tribes. There are over 400 tribal justice systems that exist, and every tribal court is different. You will never find two that are exactly the same. Tribal courts can be defined as these modern courts where they're created by the tribe for the community to receive services that can help people receive services that can help resolve conflict, help resolve disputes, help correct behavior, help people heal, and help people get well. Tribes are exercising their tribal sovereignty to have their own court system that is separate from the state court and the federal court. These tribal courts are governed by the tribe's own laws that is passed by the tribe itself. Many tribes incorporate a traditional justice approach that focuses on repairing relationships in the community and heavily focusing on restoring balance to the people. Across this country, tribal courts vary, sometimes drastically. So we start with the different types of courts at trial level. So you can find tribal courts that have trial levels that include a traditional type of court. You can have a peacemaking court, or you can have a Western adversarial type of court. All of these types of courts run and operate differently. Some you have elders on the traditional court, and the court administrator has to make sure that that court is upheld and runs the way according to the tribal law. Peacemaking also is going to operate a little bit differently, where you have a peacemaker assisting as a third party to opposing sides where they're trying to find a resolution together. And then also with this Western adversarial system, you have a judge sitting before two opposing parties and helping to determine fact, and the judge will make a decision from there. Ages of tribal courts can vary as well. You have some tribal courts that are just preparing for their first court hearing. All the way, you have tribal courts that have been around for over 50 years in this country. So you will have court clerks and court administrators working in these court systems that vary drastically with how old these court systems are. For case types, you can see both Native people appear in tribal court and non-Native people appear in certain types of cases. So you will hear for Native people, you'll hear a lot of family law cases, or you might see in terms of conservatorship cases. For non-natives, you can perhaps see them for speeding, or if there's any damage done to the environment. Sometimes non-natives will appear in court for violating tribal law that aims to protect areas of the tribe's land and their environment, and perhaps even their sacred sites. The number of court hearings per month will vary. You'll have some tribes who have court maybe once a month or every other month, and then you'll have tribal courts that have court several times a day, every day of the week. The court dockets will vary as well. Some tribal courts have one case on the court docket, maybe up to 5, and then you'll have other tribal courts with a docket of maybe over 20 cases. For a court staff, the court staff size is going to vary as well. In some tribal courts, you're going to have 1 person, or you may have up to over 20 or 30 court clerks in some of the larger tribal courts that exist out there. Staff can tend to be either full-time or part-time, and even in some tribal courts, they're going to be volunteer. The court administrator can be defined as a court staff member who is responsible for operating and managing the administration of the entire tribal judicial system. Their responsibilities are going to vary in each court. For example, sometimes you're going to have a court administrator who is going to share some of the managing duties with the judge. The law may say the judge is responsible for perhaps the budget or meeting with the court administrator to work on a budget together. Sometimes you're going to see the court administrator also be the court clerk in some of the newer developing courts. So you're going to see a court administrator assume duties that a traditionally court clerk would do, more of the clerical, customer service, more of the case management type of duties. Sometimes you might hear the term court director or court manager. Essentially, these are usually the same type of equivalent to what we know as a court administrator. They're going to have the same type of management type of duties. The court administrator is responsible for ensuring the court strives to meet the court's purpose. Usually the court will strive, or the court administrator will strive to meet the court's vision statement, the mission statement, as well as upholding the court's values. All of this ties back to the tribe's culture and tradition. And the whole purpose of this court system, again, as we defined, is it's to serve the people. So these courts are set up to really serve and listen and to genuinely help the community. Court administrators are also team members. Working in a court, you are part of a team. You are part of a team that all shares the same type of goals, where you want to make sure that the court is operating satisfactorily, that the court is operating successfully, that people are getting information, the information that they asked for. It's just the team members consist of the court clerk, usually the court administrator, and the judge. And usually they all have the same goal to really serve the people to the best of their ability. Tribal court administrators are advocates of tribal sovereignty. They are helping to administer and manage this judiciary, this independent separate judiciary that handles their own matters, again, separate from the state and the federal courts. Court administrators can be either native, they can be tribal members, or they can be non-native as well. Court administrators will have a different level of education for every court that you go to. Some tribes will require a 2-year degree, some tribes will require a 4-year degree, and more recently, I see some court administrators possess a graduate degree, whether it's a master's degree or whether it's a law degree. So there's going to be different levels of education that you're going to see in each tribal court. Higher degrees, of course, are not required. They can be helpful, but understand that tribal court personnel, they are able to go to certain trainings to help with continuing education. And there's continuing education in this field of court administration because tribal courts are always evolving. Every year, every day, there are new laws impacting tribal courts, whether it's tribal law or perhaps federal law. There's all these different variety of changes happening with the tribal courts. So there's always continuing education available for court administrators. And this education is going to serve great. It's going to serve just fine, where you don't necessarily have to have a court administrator possess a 4-year or a graduate degree. It, again, very helpful, but not required. Some of the values for the court administrator include usually, again, this importance of serving people and helping others. And sometimes perhaps they possess this value of choosing a career that has meaning behind it. Many of these values definitely align with someone who would be successful in working in a court that you'd want on your court team. Because, of course, tribal communities, they're very community centered and they focus on the people and making sure that people are taken care of. For character, of course, you want someone who, in this court administrator position, and we see this often, we have these court administrators who are dependable. They are so reliable for their judges. They are dependable for their staff. They have amazing integrity and honesty to follow the laws, to follow the policies, and also to enforce policies as well. And also, they have this character of just genuinely wanting to do the best they can, where they're going to be very diligent in every task that they do. For skills, court administrators need a lot of skills because they are responsible for managing and making all of these management types of decisions, whether it's decisions on how the court is running, or perhaps working with the judge and discussing certain decisions. Some of these skills also involve more of this go-getter type of personality, where you're going to have a court administrator who perhaps may have a smaller budget and perhaps the court rules need to be revised. Well, this court administrator is going to go above and beyond and figure out a way to get these court rules done despite their small budget. So you have amazing court administrators with these skills that are going to be a go-getter, that are going to find the answer, find solutions, and do what it takes to get certain court projects done. So for those of you who may not know quite what a tribal court administrator does, you may be wondering, what does, perhaps you have a friend who's a tribal court administrator and you don't know what they do. So this next part, we're going to dive into the 7 areas of tribal court administration. And this is very important. This is something you should take notes on because these areas really make up how these areas make up the responsibilities for what the court administrator is responsible for doing. And so we are going to go over each of these 7 different areas. So the first area is tribal court governance. So tribal court administrators have this responsibility to really understand tribal sovereignty. They have the responsibility to understand jurisdiction, to ensure they're aware of all of the court authorities that exist for the tribe, all the court authorities that impact the tribal court. So for example, Constitution, Tribal Law and Order Code, court rules, tribal court clerk's manual, administrative orders, just to name a few. It's important that these court administrators are up to date with the evolving changes of modern tribal courts, keeping up with news today, keeping up with changes happening and impacting all tribal courts in this country. Also, part of this court governance is just having a strong knowledge and foundation of keeping up with leadership training as well as management training, and also ensuring that culture is appropriately reflected and incorporated in the tribal court according to what the tribe wants, of course. So this first area, very, very heavy on this governance. The court administrator has these responsibilities to not only be educated in these areas, but also make sure that the court clerk is keeping up with current trends as well, and always being aware of what is coming and impacting tribal court jurisdiction as well as tribal courts. The next area that tribal court administrators are responsible for is this area of court office administration. And what this consists of is that the court administrator is responsible for maintaining all the court offices usually, which could include the court administrator's office, the court clerk's office, file room, any other type of storage areas for the court, and all the furniture that goes with that, maybe all the computer software licenses that go with that as well. The court administrator is really responsible for making sure that this person is aware of it's just keeping up with managing these offices, as well as the courtroom. The courtroom is full of technology. The courtroom needs to be kept up to a certain standard as well. So court administrator responsible for the recording system, microphones, case management system, everything. The court safety. So the court administrator can also sometimes be responsible for making sure that the court is secure and safe for court clients as well as the court staff as well. The court administrator is also responsible for keeping up with technology, not only in the courtroom, but also all throughout the court building as well. And meaning that they're not the tech person, but they're keeping up with up-to-date current trends of how technology is making tribal courts more efficient. And of course, some of you may be responsible for the court building. So some court administrators may be responsible for just making sure that they are overseeing certain maintenance of the building. I know that I had to deal with that when I worked at a tribal court. I kind of was responsible for like keys and other miscellaneous building type of things. The third area that court administrators are responsible for are the case management and trials. So as court administrator, you have your court clerks who are focused on these different areas of cases. Now, I did mention earlier about the different types of courts out there, and understanding that as court administrator, your job is to make sure that your court clerks and court staff are handling all of these court cases timely and efficiently, and making sure that is being done in all of the civil cases, in all of the criminal cases, in every trial, whether that's bench or jury. Wellness court, for those tribes that have appellate courts, sometimes you have to administer that too. It just depends on what court you're from. But in some courts, you have a court administrator be court administrator for both trial court and appellate court. Restorative justice is also an area that the court administrator could help manage as well. Some communities focus on counseling and treatment and just these important check-ins. And then also other tribes focus on circle sentencing as well. So much variety out there. Court administrators have so much on their plate already. The fourth area, court administrators are focused on maintaining and managing the finances of the court, of course. So the court administrator has to understand what the financial policies are. The court administrator has to know how to manage a court budget. the court administrator has to understand and make sure the processes for money coming in to the court is being managed and tracked appropriately, as well as money going out to make payments for child support or restitution or bills. Financial sustainability, that is an area where the court administrator is always seeking to find more tribal court funding, and also including to write grants as well. So the court administrator responsible for all that in many cases, unless sometimes tribes have a grant writer. The fifth area is court staff management. So court administrators can be responsible for, of course, their court clerks, any other admin assistants, and court administrators need to understand what human resources authorities there are, because you are a supervisor and you are responsible for your staff, making sure that your staff is working in a friendly, making sure that your court staff, they are working in a non-toxic and healthy environment. It's important for court administrators to keep up with their supervisor training, so that way they understand how to be a good supervisor. It's important that court administrators keep up with team management trainings as well. It's important that they have a good working team between all of their staff. So understanding that part of their responsibility is to manage this team successfully. And also understanding about the limited liabilities involved when knowing that court clerks in their role as a court clerk, that they are protected within their capacity against any type of lawsuits that may happen when someone may sue the tribal court and a case based on maybe like a file stamp error or something clerical, where you have a case go to the appellate court because of a court clerk's error. And so it's important to kind of understand that part of this limited liability area. The community and court office relations. So here the court administrator is responsible for making sure that the court is serving the public and the court clients to a satisfactory level. The court administrator is making sure that not only internal colleagues are okay with procedures like current processes, as well as external partners are getting everything they need. Sometimes we have to work with jails, sometimes we have to work with other agencies like other tribal health centers or wherever we get our evaluations from for substance abuse or psychological reports. It's so important to recognize that the court administrators we're working with so many people. As far as, and also public relations is important to really, usually that falls on the court administrator to make sure that the court administrator is keeping up with any publicity. The court administrator will know how to direct the media if necessary. Court education. Court education is huge because the community oftentimes does not understand how the court works. And so the court administrator is working usually to promote education to really eliminate the mystery of what tribal courts do. The tribal bar. So many tribes have tribal bars that can consist of attorneys and lay advocates who want to represent in the tribal court. Here we have management over the tribal bar. So the court administrators have to make sure the applications are working, making sure that the annual fees and the annual dues are properly collected. Maybe there's reminder mailing letters, letters that are going to be mailed out to remind people. And also just to kind of keep track with making sure that they got their oaths, making sure that they got their certificates, all of that. Which again, that's like a big area. And finally, the last area. So the last area of court, the seventh area of court administration is court planning and performance. This area focuses on court advancement. Courts are evolving. Courts can grow. Courts can hear different types of cases, and they can hear new types of cases each year. Depending on what the tribe wants, of course. Court development falls under this because it's all about planning for the court. Court development is focusing on projects related to how to plan to reach the court that the tribal council wants. The code development is also an area that is important for the court administrator to manage, to make sure that codes are getting developed accordingly and making sure that these codes are incorporating creation stories or the tribe's values and customs and traditions, making sure that these codes are really being created in a way that the tribe wants them to. So sometimes the court administrator will help with organizing and managing that project. Sometimes there's evaluations done on the court as well, or sometimes called assessments, and so the court administrator will manage those. Statistics, court administrators usually have the responsibility to track how many cases we had for court, how many new filings we had, how many cases closed this month. So all these statistics are important for the future of grants. And finally, court administrators work on writing reports. So sometimes the court administrator will prepare a report for the community or tribal council just to let people know about how the court is processing and or how things are going and how the court is moving along in certain areas. Okay, with all that said, court administrators do a ton. Court administrators may delegate, but oftentimes court administrators do all of that usually on their own in many courts. I want to conclude by saying court administrators are essential to the court team. They are, part of the main, they're just so critical to making sure that the court is moving in the right direction to uphold tribal law, to uphold the tribe's vision and mission statements. The court administrators are essential to the community. The court administrators really want to make sure that the tribal court is a place for the people and that the people are using it. It's made for them. The court administrators are essential to the administration of tribal justice. So again, court administrators listing all of those potential tasks that they could be responsible for. They are so key and critical to the administration and the success of leading towards dealing with tribal justice. And finally, court administrators are so essential to tribal sovereignty. I want to conclude by saying thank you again for choosing to watch this video on the role of the court administrator. This session hopefully will give you a helpful view into how much a court administrator does and how much a court administrator could be responsible for. Again, a lot of those areas will vary depending on staff across tribal courts across the country. However, in general, this is a very general list of areas that the court administrator would be responsible for. I want to thank you. I want to welcome any questions you may have, and please send them to UNLV over at the Indian Nations Gaming and Governance Program. There's the email address, or as well as you could email me over at the Field of Tribal Courts, and my email address is listed there. I want to thank you, and I look forward to seeing you at our next recording session. Thank you.